Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. And once again, welcome to our people online and on the Zoom. And thank you for being with us. And we're starting a few minutes late again, but that's all right. And you will be, I'm sure you'll be most touched by Virginia Saldahna's talk. As I said at the start, I've known Virginia since about 1920, I think it was, 21. And
20.
what do I say? No, 2001, 2000. Yeah. Anyway, a little bit. Anyway, look, it's great to have Virginia here today, and on this very important topic of patriarchy, help or hindrance to church and society. I'm not going to tell you of anything about Virginia's being a grandmother or anything like that, but she is a well-known theologian and writer and activist, and she was very prominent in Pax Christi many years ago and has continued to forward a voice in the church for women and other minorities in a very important way. So I just want to welcome Virginia to this.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I personally think that patriarchy is the bottom line cause of all the problems in the world today. And I'll tell you why. And yes, I titled it, How It Affects All Aspects of Life. Okay.
Is this being recorded? Yes.
Patriarchy is a social system governing all institutions, every institution that we have, whether it's politics, economics, society, family, church. It's there in all institutions where the male perspective dominates. And because of that, you have the exploitation of and oppression of the weak, the poor, marginalized groups, and the submission of women to men. It reinforces the superiority of the male and the subjugation of women, the weak, and the earth. Today, we are aware of the fact that the earth also is suffering. And we have to really be attentive to that. There is hierarchy in all relationships. So equality hardly comes in. Everybody tries to insert themselves somewhere in that hierarchy. Tradition and culture ultimately develops to reinforce patriarchal power, values, and norms. All our traditions and culture is developed with patriarchal values. Ideologically, patriarchy is the opposite of feminism, not matriarchy. Okay? Because feminism, patriarchy is an ideology, feminism is also an ideology. Feminism seeks to undo the ills of patriarchy. Unfortunately, many like patriarchs have condemned feminism, given it a bad name, but really, feminism seeks to undo the ills of patriarchy. Feminism is an ideology begun as a women's movement after the declaration of the UN Human Rights Charter. It has been active down the centuries. It has fought for the rights of women, children, the earth, and all life. Patriarchy is not exclusively male. So when I say patriarchy, I don't refer to all men, because all men are not patriarchs and all women are not feminists. Okay? We have women who are solidly patriarchal and we have men who are strongly feminist. Feminine is a patriarchal construct and should not be confused with feminism. Okay? Don't equate feminine to feminism. The church very happily, uses the word femininity, which is definitely not feminist. Now, Judith Attilera, who's a Spanish activist, describes feminism as social transformation to end the oppression of women. It requires rebellion and opposition to social institutions of patriarchy. It's not isolated from the other forms of struggle, she says. So all forms of struggle are against patriarchy and its oppression. According to Dr. Elizabeth Johnson, who's a famous theologian in the United States, she said it affirms the dignity of women, critiques systems of patriarchy, advocates social and intellectual changes.
Can somebody mute Daphne? Who can we mute? Spokesman.
Put off your phone. Somebody please put off your phone or attend to your phone.
Daphne. Oh no, Daphne.
That's right. Okay. Sorry.
It critiques systems of patriarchy, advocates social and intellectual changes, the freeing of relationships among human beings and between human beings and the earth. Feminism works towards equality and not female superiority. Feminists respect individuals' informed choices. Everyone has a right to sexual autonomy and the ability to make decisions about when, how, and with whom to conduct their sexual life. Was Jesus a feminist? What do you think? How many of you think Jesus was a feminist?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. It depends on which scripture.
Yeah, once when I gave a talk to a whole class of seminarians, I wrote on the board, Jesus was a feminist. One guy actually came and erased it. He was so angry. How dare you call Jesus a feminist? I said, just listen to me. At the end of my talk, he came and wrote on the board, Jesus is a feminist. Okay. Why do I call Jesus a feminist? Because he worked towards social transformation. Okay, Luke 4:16-21, Matthew 1:1-11, Luke 4, where Jesus declares, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I've come to give good news to the poor. Okay, not to those guys in the Sanhedrin or the, the government or whatever. Come to give good news to the poor, to set captives free. We all know that. And Matthew 1-11 is the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the peacemakers. Jesus broke the law to heal women. We have Matthew 5:25-34, where we are told about the woman with the flow of blood. All of you know that. She touched him. He healed her. He could have let it go. Because according to the law, she, with the flow of blood, had to be sitting at home. She couldn't mix in society. She could not touch a man because the man would become unclean, much less a rabbi who Jesus was considered a rabbi. But she touched him. Could you imagine how frightened she was when she touched him? Because he said, who touched me? And then she said, I. And instead of condemning her, he praised her faith. He said, your faith has healed you. So in that one action of his, he broke the taboo of women's menstruation. But today, what do we hear from the church? Women cannot be ordained. Why? Because they are unclean. Because they are not like men. So you see the ridiculous, this is patriarchy in the church. So Jesus affirmed the dignity of woman, like the woman caught in adultery. I would like to rename that story as woman. Jesus catches men in adultery, because what he wrote on the ground, no man remained there to stone the woman. No man remained there to stone the woman. He said, "You who is without sin, cast the first stone." They all slunk away. So Jesus affirmed the dignity of woman. He acted against patriarchy when he established woman's witness. That was at the time of his resurrection. Okay? Though Peter and John ran to the tomb, he appeared to Mary Magdalene. He didn't appear to them. He appeared to Mary Magdalene in the garden, and he said, "Go and tell my brothers." He gave her the charge to be the witness of his resurrection. According to Jewish law, a man could give witness. And to equal a man, 3 women had to give witness. So one woman's witness was not good enough. 3 women had to give witness. But Jesus broke that law, and he made a woman a witness of his resurrection. He advocated social and intellectual changes. What did he do at the Last Supper? When the servants were supposed to wash the feet of the guests who entered into the Jewish home, he himself washed the feet of everybody. In fact, Peter said, "You will not wash my feet." But he wanted to tell them that if you are going to serve people, you have to first wash their feet. Which clergy today does that? Which man among our clergy washes anybody's feet? In fact, we have clericalism today in our church because of patriarchy. He promoted freeing of relationships between human persons. Luke 10, the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan. Who was the person who helped the man who was lying injured on the street? It was a Samaritan. The Levite and the priest walked on the other side. They just didn't look at him. How many of us go to church and ignore helping our neighbor? Ignore giving succor to the poor, who join in all the hate speech that we hear. So what does it mean to really be a Christian and follow Jesus? Jesus was a feminist. Then the woman at the well, again, a Samaritan woman at the well. His followers, the disciples came to him and said, "What are you doing talking to a Samaritan woman?" They were shocked. But there he was discussing theology with her. And not only that, she went to her town and she brought all the people to follow Jesus. How many people did the apostles bring to follow Jesus? This woman brought her whole village to follow Jesus. But what happened to Jesus? He was seen as a rebel and he was crucified for it. He was crucified for it. Yes, being a good Christian can crucify us. What are the values of patriarchy? Power over others. The accumulation of wealth, property, which is capitalism, which is now promoted as and economic system. Human beings are seen as a capital resource in capitalism. Masculinity, machoism. You see, in advertisements also, they promote a lot of machoism. So you see today, we were seeing a lot of, we have a lot of influencers today. Many of them are these machoist guys. And for some time, the police had a problem with those little fellows riding on Sydney Bridge. You see, that's all being machoist. Male qualities are superior to female qualities. So rationality, as if only men can be rational. Competitiveness. Today, so much of competitiveness is promoted. Compete. Don't help the other along. Just compete with one another. Be first. Be the best. They promote virginity and monogamy for women, but not for men. They expand their power base to increase their followers. You see that in the colonial powers. The invasion of other sovereign territories, we're seeing it today. Whether it be in Gaza, whether it be in Ukraine, whether it be Trump in the United States invading Venezuela to capture their oil. So you see the links. Power and money bring superiority. Love is not seen as a power. Conformity and the imposition of one culture. That's what the colonialists did. Whether they did it here in Australia, whether they did it there in India, everywhere. No? They anglicized everybody. They destroyed local cultures. They imposed their language, they imposed their food culture, they imposed their dress. And today we Christians are suffering the backfire of it in India. And misogyny. We see strong misogyny in the church. You see misogyny in your parliament. You see misogyny everywhere, particularly guys who like to promote themselves as macho. What are the tools of patriarchy? Violence and aggression. So you have domestic violence, you have violence in the streets. The first thing that the man will do is to hit somebody or to be aggressive and hurt somebody who is weaker than him. The silencing and the suppression of truth. That is another tool of patriarchy, and we are seeing it today happening in politics everywhere. The suppression of truth. Capitalism and the market economy promotes individualism. The oppression and subjugation and exploitation was promoted by colonialism. Domination in all aspects of life. The fostering of hierarchies so that there is a pecking order. There is an institutionalization of injustice. Like in India, we have caste, or you have economic classes everywhere. People look down on one another because they feel they don't belong to the same class, caste, skin color. Exclusions today, fortunately, the LGBTQI are more vocal, and so we know of their marginalization. But in the past, we never even heard about them, right? Today, at least, we are aware of their marginalization. And again, injustice towards women and indigenous people. But I really appreciate Australia because you are now, at least appreciating and acknowledging the indigenous people. In the United States, they've just been obliterated. They're, considered like just non-existent. Sadly. Religion is appropriated and misused to gain power. It's happening everywhere. If you see it, somebody was telling me yesterday, no, Palestine never existed. You read the Bible. I said, the Bible is not a history book. It's not a history book. It's a faith reflection of the journey of God's people. It's not a history book. So, narratives are created. You see all these Bible thumpers in the United States also. They are saying, yeah, the whole of Palestine belongs to the Jews. That was given to them by God. No. The Palestinian people were always there. Palestine was a state that belonged to the Palestinian people. Sadly, because of the conflict and because of what happened in Germany, and the British carved out Israel from Palestine, the UN did not recognize Palestine as a state. And so advantage was taken. And Netanyahu found an excuse to pulverize Gaza and commit genocide, but does not acknowledge that he commits genocide. So also religious interpretation is done to suit agenda. We realize today when so many women are studying theology, we realize the misinterpretation of scripture. Like I said, that story of the so-called woman caught in adultery should be men caught in adultery. I told this to a bishop, he flew off his chair. Yeah. But they don't want to acknowledge, because they are reading with the eyes of patriarchy. Today, the creation of narratives by the powerful subverts truth. It's happening in India too, They create narratives. And it subverts the truth. It spreads hate. Like a guy told me yesterday, oh, the Muslims want to take over the world. I said, from where did you get that? No, it's a narrative that's being spread, 9/11. Up to today, we really don't know the truth. But the narrative was the Muslims wanted to destroy the United States. So the Muslims, are demonized. And everybody is made to demonize the Muslims. It's happening in my country also, sadly. But the feminist movement, thank God, we've got a very strong feminist movement in India. And they're standing up to the government. Today, social media and information technology is being used to help to propagate these narratives. So even the news that you watch, you have to be very careful. Which news is really giving the truth or the right perspective? What is happening on the ground? Because news can also be given from different perspectives. What are the tools of patriarchy? Stereotyping. Now, this is most common, stereotyping. Girls should be like this, boys should be like this. And we even had sayings, We continue to, I remember when children should be seen and not heard. Boys can be free, but girls had to be controlled. Why? Because parents felt they had to protect the virginity of their daughters. So these were the stereotypes. Women can only do these things. Men can be leaders. Until very recently, only men were leaders. Till today, women are struggling to become president of the United States. But do people in the United States vote for a woman? Why? Because of the stereotypes. Because of the stereotypes. So stereotypes creates molds, forcing people to fit in. So you have masculinity, femininity, you have the binaries of good, bad, virgin, vamp, white, black, mate, female. Nothing more than that. But today we recognize that there is a spectrum of genders. So you either be a good woman or a bad woman, nothing in between. And who's a bad woman? But who has created these binaries? So we have to reject these binaries, particularly this white, black, male, female, good, bad. What is good? What is bad? For certain people, things are good. Certain people, things are bad. Stereotyping and maligning of communities, whole communities of people. Like I said, the Muslim community is very badly maligned today, all over the world. Black and indigenous people, religious minorities. Now, in India, the Christians also are a religious minority, and there is a lot of persecution, not maybe in the big cities, but in the interiors. There is a lot of persecution of the people, particularly the poorer people who have joined Christianity. So it thrives on creation of divisions, divide and rule. In fact, divide and rule was a tool of the British. Divide and rule, so that the people will not join together to fight you. It seeks to dominate, control, and exploit the earth's resources. And in fact, that too they attribute to the Bible, God created man and woman, and he placed them over all creation. So we can do what we like with creation. So that's again the way people read the scriptures and interpret the scriptures. So the displacing of indigenous peoples from their land, who know how to protect the land the best. Targeting people who support resistance. In India, we had a Jesuit called Stan Swami, who stood with the indigenous people. The government arrested him on false charges, put him in jail at the age of 82, and really persecuted him till he died, while he was under arrest on false charges. And in Australia, you have Pemalui. Again, another person who was killed because he was resisting. What is the culture and tradition in patriarchy? It develops to uphold patriarchal values. So the culture develops to uphold patriarchal values. Like I say, we have a certain way in which we bring up boys, in which we bring up girls, so that they will continue upholding patriarchal values. Language is exclusive. And for that, the Catholic Church is the best example. It uses the male generic term. Like one day when I went to church, I saw on the board over there, Jesus saves all men. And I said to myself, maybe women didn't need to be saved. This use of the male generic term, we are in the 21st century. We have to change. Traditional family. The father is the head and the breadwinner. The mother is the nurturer and the homemaker. But today we know that most mothers are working. And in India, I know there's so much of domestic violence because the men expect the women to work outside and do all her domestic chores as well. So there is a lot of domestic violence while he sits like the lord of the house. Then we bring up boys to say, men do not cry. And that's one of the worst things of patriarchal upbringing, bringing up boys to say that men do not cry. And I say that when men want to cry, they drink. That's the only time they can cry without any, even realizing it. That's true. Men take to drink because they do not know how to express their feelings. Thank God today things are changing. So in India, we have a lot of male superiority and the pampering of the male in the family. So better food is given to the male, better education, more freedom. You will find that girls as young as soon as they can put their hands to work, they send them to work so that money can be earned to put the boys through school and give them an education so that they can climb up in life. But the girls, they say, oh, she'll only be a housewife. She'll only be bringing up children. She doesn't need an education. So only the male is pampered. And we tend to give more freedom to boys and control our girls more. We control women's sexuality. The church is very fond of that. We all know it. Controlling women's sexuality. Demand virginity for women, but not for men. So I think we should change that also. Women wear white on their wedding day to show that they are virgins. I think women must begin to wear colors. Otherwise, ask a man also to wear a white suit, no?
Too many.
So even religious traditions uphold male superiority and importance. And therefore, only men are priests. That's what we keep hearing all the time from the top. Brainwashed women are among the strongest supporters and promoters of patriarchy. And we find them in the church also. They are there running after the bishops, doing what the bishops say, will never question them, will pull down other women who question the bishops. Culture is reflected in the upbringing and nurturing of girls and boys. Traditional upbringing puts them into molds of masculine and feminine. Textbooks reflect culture, so do advertisements and the market. Advertisements in the market economy targets children to get hooked to the market. Children who do not fit into the molds, like gay, trans, and intersex, get teased, marginalized, causing grave trauma to children and their parents. Today, I have started Rainbow Catholics India, and I work a lot with the LGBT group. And the saddest thing is their parents don't accept them because the church does not accept them. That is the saddest thing. And this is so natural. This is nature. And the church insists that they are making a choice. That's the biggest injustice that the church does to people. And they grieve because their own parents do not accept them. Our patriarchal Catholic Church, Christianity grew as a grassroots movement where worship was conducted in house churches. And many of those house churches were facilitated by women. You can read it in the Acts of the Apostles in Romans. House churches progressed to dedicated places of worship known as basilica after Constantine's Edict of Milan in the year 313 Christian era. That influenced the growth and the spread of Christianity and the institutionalization of the Christian faith. The gradual shift from the egalitarian and spiritual ethos of the early Christian communities to a religion centered on hierarchy, authority, and ritual enabled Christianity to survive and thrive but Christianity lost its gospel values of servant leadership and love. Therefore, today we have a clericalist priesthood, but not a servant priesthood. We do not have a servant priesthood. There may be a few. There are a few good ones. I don't say all are bad, but the majority are not. You can't put them in that category of servants. Clericalism grew in the climate of male superiority, hierarchy, and monarchy. Sadly, Christian-dominated countries are the largest manufacturers and exporters of weapons. The church has never spoken up against these killing machines. Never. In fact, that was something I really wanted to tell Pope Francis. Even in Laudato Si, he does not talk against the manufacture of weapons. Christianity piggybacked on colonialism instead of condemning it. Indigenous people were persecuted in Christian institutions, Catholic institutions. We all know that. So the Catholic Church has lost its gospel base. Patriarchal culture affects personal lives of people of lower castes and classes, widows. I was a widow, young widow, and I know how the culture affected me and how I fought against it. That's why I become an activist, I think, today. I fought against the culture that tried to put me in a mold and tell me this is how you should be. LGBTQI plus persons, LGBT relationships, childless couples, single parents are marginalized. There's no place for them in the church. I spoken about it, of course, but nobody hears. They will have programs for couples, but never for single parents. When it's most needed for single parents. Because there are many single parents today, because there are many girls who have separated from their husbands. And they need a lot of support. Unmarried persons, especially women, if they become pregnant, they are marginalized. And how do they become pregnant? The man is never questioned. No, the focus is only on the woman, isn't it? Is the man ever questioned? Does the church say, who is the man who made you pregnant? They never ask. But they condemn the woman. Culture in the royal family, we know that, how poor Diana suffered. We know how Harry and Meghan have suffered because of the patriarchal culture in the royal family. Of course, they are fighting back against it. Hierarchy in jobs, blue collar, white collar jobs, caring and cleaning are considered lower than professional. The picture up there is the burning of widows in India, in the old days. Patriarchy in religion makes it toxic. All major religions are patriarchal. Jesus did not start a religion. He started a movement to oppose the ills of patriarchy in Judaism. Politicians have and continue to use religion to gain power. We've seen it in India. We've seen it in Israel. And also in the United States, the Catholic Church supported Donald Trump. That's how he won the election. They supported Donald Trump. They were even preaching it from the pulpit. Religious groups in the majority enjoy superiority. And there is consequent persecution of minority religious groups. Politicians reward religious leaders who push their agendas. Now, all this is corrupt, but nobody speaks up against it. How do we dismantle patriarchy? Now, this is where we come in. Develop critical thinking. That is very important. We have to develop critical thinking. Don't just absorb, critique. promote a human rights perspective through education. I realized that, human rights is not part of the curriculum of education. It should be. It should be, taught from the primary section, the Human Rights Charter, so that people learn to respect the rights of every other person. Be a part of the feminist movement. Promote feminism and its values. Challenge patriarchal attitudes and actions. Promote a simple lifestyle. Don't be part of the market. Promote community and solidarity. Encourage small enterprises. Today we have a big, huge, in India, it's very stark because, we had a lot of small shopkeepers, selling things. We had the vegetable vendors. But today we've got malls that sell everything. So it's putting those little guys out of business. And those are poor people. They just bring a basket and they sell it on the street. Now, if you go to the malls and buy all your things, that poor fellow loses his business. So we support small enterprises, save the environment and the earth. I realize that in Western countries, I think Europe can also, Australia can also be considered one of those progress countries. Attention to saving electricity, saving water should be more. Do we realize also that, today we tend to save a lot on the cloud, right? Many of you use the cloud to save your stuff. Do you know that that cloud has to be saved in databases? And where are these databases based? In South countries, poorer countries. And they require a lot of water, where communities in those areas are deprived of water. They are deprived of water. Why? Because these huge databases that are planted in their countries are using up all the water. So they get water once a week, where they have rich water resources, because it's all being used up by these databases over there. I never use the cloud. I never use the cloud. So we must be conscious of these things, because it is affecting somebody's life somewhere. And these big corporations, they don't care. They don't care. As long as they are making their money. So work towards gender neutral or inclusive language. Change culture. Change the way we bring up people, change the way we behave towards women, the poor, the marginalized, LGBT people, accept them. Be inclusive, be nurturing, and respect all. Value pluralism and diversity. Jesus taught us the power of love to heal, to build relationships, and to build community. Mahatma Gandhi said, the day the power of love overrules the love of power, the world will know peace. The day the power of love overrules the love of power, the world will know peace. Follow Jesus in the Gospels. Mahatma Gandhi always said he loved Jesus Christ. He would have been a Catholic, a Christian, but he hated the Christians. Why? Because of the way the British behaved in our country. And they were Christians. So what was their what should I say, their
Testimony.
a testimony of their faith? What was the testimony of their faith? Oppression, putting people down. So he said, I love Jesus Christ, but I hate the Christians. I've got water here. I've got water here. Demonstrate against and put pressure on governments to reduce arms expenditure and shun war. This is Pax Christi Women in London. They demonstrate against militarism and war. Financing peace versus financing war. Now, this is a latest document that has been prepared by this lady, Atiya Varis. It is a report of an independent expert on the effects of foreign debt and other related international financial obligations of states on the full enjoyment of human rights, particularly economic, social, and cultural rights. Now, she did a study of all countries who are in debt. They take aid and they cannot pay it back. Because their GDP, how much of their GDP goes towards, first, militarism, the arms, building up the arms, not industry, but the arms pile in their own country, and towards financing debt. Now, my daughter, who works in the European Network of International Debt and Development, she gave me this report because it was done by one of her colleagues. And this is what they found. The military and arms sector contributes an estimated 6% of global greenhouse gas emissions.
That's not reported, generally.
No, it's not reported.
Look at the wars going on. Look at the amount of pollution from all those bombs, both in Ukraine and in Gaza. In 2024, data showed that there were over 56 ongoing conflicts, the most since Second World War, with 92 countries involved in conflicts beyond their borders. The global economic impact of violence in 2023 amounted to $19.1 trillion, or $2,380 per person, in a world where some people still live on $1 per day, which would be 365 persons per year, per person per year. An analysis of 197 countries from 2000 to 2013 found that a 1% increase in military spending results in a reduction in health expenditure per capita of 0.62% on an average. The austerity measures prescribed by the IMF on countries that take debt is by wage freezes, subsidy cuts, value-added tax hikes, and drastic cuts to public expenditure have provoked mass protests in Bangladesh, Kenya, Indonesia, and Kashmir, which were often met with violent suppression by military and police forces. I don't know if you were there, Lionel, in the 90s, when this globalization of the economy was coming in. We critiqued this exactly, because every year now in my country, the annual budget will be released by Parliament. And you see the budget allocated to arms, buying of arms, is 30%. And the allocation of the budget to human development like education, health, housing are all below 5%. All below 5%. 30% to arms. Women in particular bear the brunt of such measures. IMF-backed measures reduce public employment opportunities, shrink access to healthcare, raise the cost of living, and exacerbate unpaid care burdens on women and girls. These structural adjustment policies, as they are known as, do not just undermine economies, they unravel the social fabric and perpetuate gender equality. Initiatives to create solidarity, build and strengthen the neighborhood community. Have you heard of neighborhood communities? Actually, in Asia, the bishops, they had come with this vision of the church as a communion of communities. So where people live in neighborhoods and come to know each other very closely in their neighborhood communities. They come together, they pray together, they interact with each other, they care for each other in the communities. So build and strengthen the neighborhood community. Show solidarity with the marginalized, the poor, indigenous people, the exploited. Focus on the common humanity, not on our differences. Focus on our common humanity, not on our differences. Come and see my home. Now, this was an initiative started by a Muslim feminist in India to counter the demonization of minorities. So, women were told, invite your neighbor of another faith to your home and interact with her, just over a cup of tea. Or if she would not mind, have a meal. So that you come to know your neighbor and build a relationship and care for them. So we need to build relationships at the ground level so that politicians cannot divide us. Then we have the building and strengthening of women's neighborhood groups in the community to stand with each other, to help share and empower each other. Now, in the year 1991, 1992, there were riots particularly in Bombay. There were riots in different parts when the Hindu government brought down that Muslim mosque in Ayodhya. So there were riots all over. And we found in areas where we had strong women's groups, particularly in the slum areas. Actually, the riots were more in the slum areas. There, where those women groups were functioning, in those areas, the people remained peaceful because they did not allow people to come and harass their Muslim neighbors. The Hindu women stood by their Muslim neighbors. So this is how we can build peace, by standing with each other, see one another's humanity, not our differences. So, women rejected rumors about their Muslim neighbors and protected them.